For boomers, discipline wasn't just a good trait. It was the only way to survive. Growing up during the Cold War, with the constant threat of nuclear attack, meant failure simply wasn't an option.
Look for cover, the nearest cover. Don't try to make it home unless home is the nearest place to go.
You had to be strong because if you stumbled, no one was coming to pick you up. To boomers, weakness was a sign you weren't trying hard enough. But take a look at Gen Z and Gen Alpha. They're growing up in an era of self-care, mindfulness, and making mistakes without consequences. How can boomers understand that? For them, survival was everything, while younger generations now talk about balance. Could that softness have worked in their world? No therapy, just tough it out. The boomer way. Boomers didn't know what therapy was. They simply didn't need it, or at least that's what they were told. If you had problems, you kept them to yourself. No time for vulnerability, no space for excuses. You powered through, period. Today, Gen Z and Gen Alpha find it almost absurd to ignore their problems. Therapy, mindfulness apps, and stress management are the new norm. Boomers? They would have called that weak. But younger generations have something boomers never did: the freedom to talk about their feelings and heal. But can they really handle the kind of harsh reality boomers faced? Maybe that head down, push through mentality was the key to their success, or a recipe for trouble. From Vietnam to 9 to 5, how boomers were shaped by war and work. For many boomers, life began on the battlefield. The Vietnam War wasn't just a headline, it was their reality. They quickly learned you had to fight for your place in the world, both literally and figuratively. After the war, long workdays awaited them. Success? It only came after years of grinding away in a 9-to-5 job, without breaks. Compare that to Gen Z, who now expect flexible hours and remote work as standard. For boomers, that's almost unthinkable. They had to fight for every penny. But now, the younger generation wants freedom, balance, and happiness on their own terms. Can they ever truly understand the tough reality of hard work? No trophies for trying. Boomers earned every win. In the boomer world, there were no consolation prizes. You either won or you lost. There was no in-between. Every win, every promotion was hard-earned, and failure was a brutal lesson. But now they see Gen Z and Gen Alpha getting trophies for participating. For boomers, that feels like a betrayal. They had to claw their way up without recognition until they reached the top. Today, it seems like everyone gets a prize whether you win or lose. Boomers don't understand. If you never learn to fail, how do you learn to win? For younger generations, it's about effort, but for boomers, only the result matters. Can they ever bridge that cultural gap? The silent struggles. Divorce, shame, and social expectations. For boomers, divorce wasn't just a personal failure, it was a public scandal. In a time when social norms were strict and expectations high, you didn't air your dirty laundry. You kept it hidden. Unlike Gen Z and Gen Alpha, who freely share their struggles on social media and encourage openness, boomers dealt with their problems quietly. Divorce was whispered about, not celebrated or normalized like it is today. They had to maintain a perfect public image, even if their personal lives were falling apart. This pressure to appear flawless, no matter the cost, created a generation that valued discipline and reputation above all. But what toll did that take behind closed doors? From segregation to social change, the boomers' uncomfortable role. Boomers grew up in an era of racial segregation and social unrest, witnessing massive change but not always embracing it. For many, the values they were raised with clashed with the fast-paced social movements of the 1960s and 70s. Unlike Gen Z, who are often at the forefront of social justice, boomers were caught between the old world and the new. Civil rights marches, protests, and societal upheaval pushed boundaries, but not everyone in the boomer generation was ready to cross those lines. As Gen Z and Gen Alpha push even harder for change, boomers sometimes find themselves on the defensive, unsure of how to reconcile their past with the present, the generation that started working at 12 and never stopped. For boomers, starting work at age 12 or 13 was just part of life. They didn't wait for college degrees or internships. They jumped into the workforce early. Whether it was paper routes or factory jobs, Boomers learned the value of hard work young. Compare that to Gen Z, who are often encouraged to focus on school and take their time entering the workforce. Boomers didn't have that luxury. They worked, earned, and saved without complaints. Today's younger generations may balk at starting work early, but boomers didn't know anything else. They lived by the mantra, work hard, succeed. But is that mindset still relevant in today's world of side hustles and remote jobs? No safety nets, just grit. What it meant to be a boomer. Boomers had no safety nets. There were no widespread welfare programs or social protections like those available today. If you failed, there was no cushion to fall back on. This taught them grit, resilience, and the ability to keep pushing forward no matter what. Contrast that with Gen Z and Gen Alpha, who grow up with a variety of support systems, from mental health resources to financial aid. Boomers didn't have those options. They learned early on that life was hard and you had to be harder. But today's generations might ask, was that really strength? Or was it a system that failed to protect its people? From dial phones to floppy disks, the technology boomers grew up with. Boomers lived in a world where technology was a luxury, not a given. Dial phones, black and white TVs with only 3 channels, and floppy disks were cutting edge. Fast forward to Gen Z and Gen Alpha, who have grown up with smartphones, streaming services, and instant access to information. Boomers had to adapt to technology gradually, learning how to fix their own cars, read maps, and live without Google. For today's youth, everything is a click away. But boomers remember a time when patience, effort, and hands-on learning were the only ways to solve problems. Can the generations who grew up with the internet ever truly understand the world before it? Discipline was earned, not given. No participation trophies here. For boomers, participation wasn't enough. You had to win to earn recognition. They grew up in a world where trophies and awards were reserved for those who stood out, not those who just showed up. Contrast this with Gen Z and Gen Alpha, where participation trophies are common, rewarding effort rather than achievement. Boomers can't understand this shift. To them, discipline was something you earned through hard work and success. Giving out trophies for trying feels like cheating the system. But for younger generations, it's about building self-esteem and encouraging effort. This cultural divide raises a question. Is today's approach building a more confident generation, or are we losing the value of true achievement? Gen Z and Alpha. The trophy generation. But is it really so bad? Boomers scoff at the idea of participation trophies, seeing them as a symbol of a generation that doesn't know how to handle failure. But is it really such a bad thing? Gen Z and Gen Alpha have grown up in a world that values mental health, teamwork, and inclusion. Maybe it's not about rewarding mediocrity, but about celebrating effort and progress. In today's complex world, where social media and constant comparison can crush self-esteem, perhaps these trophies offer something more valuable than boomers realize. While boomers believe success should only be earned through grit and competition, maybe the younger generations are onto something, building resilience in a different yet equally important way. Why boomers think Gen Z and Alpha are too soft, and why they might be right. To boomers, Gen Z and Gen Alpha seem soft. They see kids growing up in a world of instant gratification, where challenges are met with praise just for trying. For a generation that learned through tough love and hard knocks, this looks like weakness. Boomers didn't get praise for showing up. They had to win, they had to perform. But are they right in thinking the younger generations are too soft? Today's world is very different. It's fast, digital, and incredibly competitive in ways boomers never faced. What boomers see as softness might actually be adaptability. The question is, will this new approach to life prepare Gen Z and Alpha for the same challenges boomers faced? The boomer legacy boomers built their lives on hardship and success. They overcame wars, economic recessions, and social upheavals through sheer grit and discipline. They left behind a world of wealth and opportunity, but also one filled with inequality and division. Gen Z and Gen Alpha are inheriting that world and reshaping it in their own image. Will they take the lessons of discipline and hard work from the boomers, or are they writing their own rules? The boomer legacy is complicated. one of both great success and deep challenges. And as the younger generations take the reins, only time will tell how they'll balance the lessons of the past with the demands of the future.